Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on USDA foods with a focus on protein items. My name is Kathy Powers, and joining me today is Chef Samantha Gasparo. Welcome back to those of you who have been with us before, and if this is your first webinar with us, I have a few housekeeping items. During the webinar, all attendees will be muted. However, we love to hear from you. So please feel free to communicate with us through the question box. If you have anything to share, type it into the question box. If you have questions, we love to have your questions. Please type those into the question box as well. We'll try to answer questions throughout the webinar, but we'll also have time at the end. If at any time you have technical issues, please access the help screen at the top of your attendee control panel. The handout, which also includes the recipes, is available under the Handout tab. All of the recipes that we demonstrate or refer to are available at healthyschoolrecipes.com. You'll receive an automated email this afternoon with your continuing education certificate. And if you're watching this as a webinar, as a recording, and need a certificate, please email Rebecca at coast@culinarynutritionassociates.com. We're into our second set of webinars. All month in March, we'll be focusing on USDA foods. In January, February, we looked at sandwiches and breakfast. In April and May, we'll be focusing on vegetable preparation. We'll come back in September with salads and farm to school. October, we'll focus on knife skills. And then November will be whole grains and sauces. If you've missed a webinar and want to see the recording, you can use the same registration links that are available on the Indiana Department of Education website. We're also coming to Indiana this summer for our hands-on training. We'll start in early June in southern Indiana, then go to south central Indiana, up to the Indianapolis airport. Then in July, we'll be in the northern section in Maryville, Elkhart, and then we'll wrap up near Indianapolis. So we'll start registration for those by the end of March. So keep your eyes open for those registrations. Let's get started with today's training, USDA foods with a focus on protein. The objectives for today, after completing the training, you'll be able to apply the essential concepts of mise en place and understand the benefits of kitchen organization. You'll understand how to utilize USDA foods proteins in new recipes. And you'll be able to plan menus that are on trend and appealing to your students. After this brief introduction, I'll first do nutrition insights, then we'll go to Chef Sam for her first recipe. It'll come back to me for a second set of insights, and then back to Sam for the second recipe. We'll wrap it up then with key takeaways, question and discussion, and some questions for you to think about on how to incorporate this into your operation. Of course, we always have our giveaway, our chef knife package. So we have the chef knife with the knife guard, the portable knife sharpener, the bench scraper, and a hot pad from Healthy School Recipes. You know you must be present to win. So stay with us to the end of the webinar when we'll be giving away the chef knife package. So let's get started with today's content. Before we dive into the topic, we have a poll question. I'd like to know which USDA foods protein items do you use? Chicken, turkey, pork, cheese, or beans? So take a moment and tell us which USDA foods protein items you use in your school nutrition program. And you can vote more than once. Typically, we give you 45 seconds or so to answer the poll, sometimes a little bit longer if there are a lot of new people on the webinar, but you guys are doing pretty good here. So let's go ahead and close the poll. And these are such interesting results. 100%. All of you are using chicken. Yay! Because one of our items is a recipe for chicken that I know you will love. 90% of you are using USDA Foods cheese. That's awesome. 61% are using turkey. 68% are using beans. And you know that beans can be a meat alternate as well as a vegetable. And then 55% of you, or just over half of you, are using pork. Oh, how interesting. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. So let's get started. This first section, I want to talk about USDA foods. Now, when the National School Lunch Act was signed into law by President Harry Truman in 1946, its purpose was written, and interestingly, it's the same purpose today as it was over 80 years ago. Its purpose is, it is hereby declared to be a policy of Congress as a measure of national security to safeguard the health and well-being of the nation's children, and I want to emphasize this part today, and to encourage the domestic consumption of nutritious agricultural commodities. You know, we focus a lot on the health and well-being of our children as an important purpose of the National School Lunch Act. But a secondary purpose is also to encourage the consumption of American foods. And this is, one way we do that is through USDA foods, or what some might remember as USDA commodity products. USDA foods are high quality, versatile, and economical for your school program. There's a whole range of products that are available, and we'll talk a little bit about those. USDA foods have become healthier over the years. They're produced so that many of them have no salt added or are low sodium products. Many of them are low in sugar, so they're high quality, they're versatile for your program, and they can save you lots of money. And we know today that that's one of the biggest challenges is meeting your budget, and USDA foods play a key role with that. Now, USDA foods start out at USDA, and they will compile a list and manage the USDA foods program. It then goes to the state distributing agency, and Cheryl Moore is your contact person in Indiana for USDA foods. And I have found Cheryl to be extremely helpful. So if you have any challenges, any questions, you should talk with Cheryl. And each year, your state agency will look at the total list of USDA foods. They'll work with you, the end user, to identify those that the state wants to bring in, and then they will select the products to bring in for each state. And then, of course, it goes to the recipient agency, which would be you in this case. Did you know that USDA foods comprise about 15 to 20% of the foods on a lunch tray? So any given lunch tray across the United States will have about 1 out of 5 of the foods on the lunch tray will be a USDA foods. That can go a long way to help you meet your food cost budget. Now, USDA foods get to us via one of three methods. The first is foods that are diverted or bulk foods that are sent for processing. And in Indiana, you have a number of products that you can send to be processed, such as peanut butter or pork. And across the country, USDA Food spends about $635 million, or about 700 million pounds, on foods that qualify for direct diversion. So you might say, for example, I want these peanuts to be diverted to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Or you might say, I want this block of frozen Alaska pollock to be diverted to make fish sticks. So you can use your USDA dollars to divert the commodity or the USDA foods for processing. The most popular way of getting USDA foods is direct delivery. And we spend about $678 million across the country for direct delivery. And that is where you say, I want to bring this diced chicken in. And we bring in about 646 million pounds of product across the country through direct delivery, or about 178 different products. Another important USDA foods method is USDA DoD, or Department of Defense, fresh products. And we spend about $271 million on DoD fresh products, or about 236 million pounds and 170 different products. If we look nationally, we see that $1.6 billion of foods are distributed through USDA Foods through all three programs. Now, I want you to think about how important this is for you as a school to receive these foods. But I also want to point out that in the state of Indiana, this is also important because many of your neighbors, much of your economy is with food products. And so many of your food products do contribute to USDA foods. On average, states spend about $30 million on USDA foods. And this map shows you state by state. And we see that Indiana is above average in terms of the amount that's spent by the state. You spend between $40 and $50 million a year on USDA foods. I would suggest that your per student expense is probably a little bit higher than average because the population centers, such as Illinois, California, New York, Florida, Texas, those states with very high population are going to, of course, have more total dollars, but I bet your per student dollar is pretty significant. So we talked about the products that were available nationally. Bulk products, there are 39. Total USDA direct delivery, there's 178, and then DoD is 170. I wanted to share with you the average number of products ordered by state, and I broke it down by the category and then took a look at Indiana. So you're bringing in a fewer number of products, but actually above average amount is being spent. So you guys are doing pretty good there. I just thought this was an interesting slide. So what are the most popular products? Well, the top products by dollar value is beef is top. We spend 281 million on beef, followed by cheese, then chicken, apples, and then turkey. And I know that Indiana is a big chicken and turkey producer. If we look at the top producers by volume of product, we see that potatoes are top of the list by volume, followed by chicken, pounds of apples, pounds of cheese, and then pounds of beef. So you folks are pretty high at the top with your use of chicken. Let's look at DoD Fresh. I thought it was interesting just to see what was popular in terms of produce, and the top 5 fruits are apples, followed by oranges, strawberries, pears, and grapes. And then the top 5 vegetables by dollar value. Carrots are the top, followed by lettuce, tomatoes, salad mix, and broccoli. So that's just a little insight into the world of USDA foods and just how important they are to schools. Let's bring Chef Samantha up now, as she has our first recipe for the day, Latin glazed chicken. And I'm really excited about this recipe, and it's a great way to use your USDA chicken products. Welcome back, Chef Sam. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I love these topics of the USDA foods because I think we get so used to seeing them all the time that sometimes we forget just how versatile and creative we can get with them, with adding some seasonings and adding a little flavors here and there. So I love this Latin glazed chicken recipe. There's actually 3 recipes within this recipe that I'm going to go through to complete this dish. I'll start with the rice, the grain component, and then I'm going to move on to the chicken, and then to a nice fruit relish on the top. So all the while, kind of the USDA foods are going to be interwoven through this recipe. And I think it's really how you use them and finding these recipes, really finding those flavors that your students love, but how we flavor these USDA foods and some techniques that are really helpful in how to work with them to prevent like drying out, like the USDA chicken, right? How do we prevent that from drying out? So we're going to go through all of these tips today as I go through the recipe. So I'm going to start. This recipe was developed by a chef down in Georgia. She now works for the Georgia State Department, Chef Rachel Petraglia, and she was the chef for Gwinnett County, which served, I think, over 100,000 students every day. So she was really developing recipes for a very large student body and just packed with flavor, you know, using a lot of seasonings. And that is one thing we really need to do to increase flavor, especially when we have a blank slate on kind of a blank palette on some of our USDA foods like rice, chicken, you know, that don't really have too much flavor wise to offer if we get those, you know, plain chicken strips or brown rice. So this is a way to, black beans and rice, and in her recipe there are plantains. I'm from Maine, it's a little hard to source plantains here, depending on the time of year. So I don't have plantains, but you can easily omit them. They're not something that credits in this recipe. They are just a food that kind of goes with the Latin chicken. So if you have access to them, that's great. They have frozen plantains that are usually pretty easy to incorporate, but you could also get fresh plantains and throw them in as well. Because this rice is cooked. It's already been cooked and cooled. So this is a great application for leftover rice. You could also very well do this recipe with raw rice and just add the liquid and be able to cook it and pretty much match the flavor. So you can go either way with this when I like the versatility of that. But a lot of times we'll serve steamed rice with, let's say, an Asian dish or something like that, and we have leftover, right? We overproduce that day. So what do you do with that? Don't throw it out. Rice is great if you chill it properly and it wasn't handled at all by the students. You can cool it properly and put it in your freezer, and it is great for things like oven fried rice and this rice dish as well. So it's great for soups as well when you have that easy pre-cooked product. As you try to implement more scratch cooking into your kitchens, it's really important to think about, make it once and serve it as many times as I possibly can. That was always my motto in the kitchen of school nutrition. So I was just not having to make brown rice every time I needed it. I was pulling it out of the freezer. So you have a cycle menu that allows you to plan for when you're going to need that. And so then you can make the amount that you want, because it kind of takes me the same amount of time to make 4 pans as it does to make 8, right? Just a few extra minutes really, because I have all the ingredients out. So thinking about things like that really builds in those kitchen efficiencies of having more in-house made items, but not doing all that work every day, because that's not really doable. So I have my cooked rice here in a bowl ready to go. Next, I'm gonna add, these are all my dried spices and flavoring. So I have some oregano here, kind of the usual suspects that you might find in any Southwest or flavors there. Mexican flavor. So we have some cumin that I just put in. Next, I have a little granulated onion, granulated garlic, and we always want to go with granulated because that's going to just disperse very easily. Next, we have some black pepper and a little bit of salt. Now I want to just toss this all together. Another step in that kitchen efficiency, you can have that blend if this is a popular menu item or you use that a lot. That spice blend, you can have that made. It's pretty much like a taco seasoning, right? Minus the chili powder. So you can just have that made and then put in the amount that you need. So you're not measuring all that out every time. You're just saying, all right, I have my spice blend already made. It's labeled dated in my dry goods, and I'm just pulling out what I need. Next, I'm gonna add a little bit of oil, because what this oil is gonna do, it's gonna protect the rice when I pop it in the oven to reheat it, but it's also going to help moisturize and rehydrate those spices and then distribute that flavor. So fat is a flavor carrier, and that's one of the most important things you need to remember about fat and why we use it in the culinary process, because it really is going to protect vegetables, things that go in the high heat oven, but it's also going to distribute flavor. It's going to pick up all those flavors and make sure it coats that rice and goes throughout the whole dish. It does that in soups, it does it in rice, it does it in a variety of dishes. Next, I'm going to add my black beans. This dish only credits as a grain, so the black beans are just a garnish. So you could have just the plain rice. If you have younger students that might not want the black beans in the dish as well, then you might want to leave those out. But this is really a play on like a black beans and rice style dish. So next I have my half hotel pan here that I'm going to add my rice to. And I don't want to overcrowd it. I don't want to make it too thick here, right? So I have it placed right in there, but all I'm doing is reheating this. So this could go 1 in your oven, 2 in your steamer, whatever you want. If you put in the steamer, make sure it's really shut tight so we're not cooking it too much and not any excess water's getting in there, because we have our perfectly cooked rice right here and I don't want any more water getting into it. So either way, it will reheat. You just, it won't take very long. So I'm going to pop this right in the oven, allow it to reheat while I get to the rest of the dish. But like I said, that can go in the steamer or it can go in the oven. So the next dish, the next component of this dish I'm going to make is where the USDA protein is coming in. Although beans can be protein as well. They're not counted as a protein in this dish. But we have our glazed chicken. So when I have to get the USDA chicken product, I really like to get the plain strips. I feel like the diced chicken can get really dry really fast when we work with it. And if I wanted to dice my strips, I could just dice them, right? So it creates a more versatile product when I get them when we have the whole strip. So that is definitely my preference of the diced versus the strips. So I have my chicken here that's been thawed out. I always want to thaw it out before I work with it, so any extra moisture is draining off and it doesn't water down whatever I'm doing. So now I'm going to add I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. I'm going to make my glaze. So I'm just going to coat this chicken in a nice little glaze, but I have all my spices and flavorings measured out and ready to go. So we're going to start right here where I have some soy sauce, which is really going to be my nice salty flavor that's going to help boost this dish, which I think is a little bit of a secret ingredient in here. Next, I have some orange juice, which I'm going to add, and I'm going to whisk all this together. Next, I have a little bit of brown sugar just for added sweetness, and then some of those same spices. I have my cumin, garlic, black pepper, and a little crushed red pepper. If you have sensitive palates, maybe sixth graders, you don't have to add that, but our students are really liking spicier and spicier, younger and younger. So we want to make sure we're changing with them as their palates are growing. Next, I'm going to add some oil. I'm going to give this a little whisk just to blend those spices in. This is something you can easily do the day before. Oftentimes when I'm working in the kitchen and putting meals for 400, 600 together, what I like to do is think about small things that I can do the day before when I have 10 extra minutes, right? Okay, I can put my sauce together and then put it in the fridge and then I'm ready to go tomorrow. So if I can shave off minutes, seconds of my day ahead of time or tomorrow in my planning, it really helps to execute things a little smoother and then use my time a little wisely as I look at my week and my prep. So next thing I'm going to do here is add a little bit of lime zest. Now, this is so important for flavor, and I hear Kathy a lot call it free flavor, and it is because you get the lime, and we don't want the juice, but we want that zest. We want that outside. So this is a microplane right here, and this will just take the very outer layer. So on the Food Network, you might see people kind of flip it over and just like start grating it. You always want to make sure you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you watch what you're doing, because right here you just want to take the top layer off, right? So it should still be a pale green. If it's white, you've gone too far and now it's going to be bitter. So you really want to watch how much you're taking off. It should just be pale green, pale orange, or pale yellow, depending on the citrus that you're zesting. You can also freeze the zest and then use it later. So it's really a great way to add tons of flavor without not affecting the nutritional analysis at all, really. So I think that's the really nice part about zest. So I'm taking this zest off, kind of getting this done. But once you zest something, you want to make sure to juice it within a couple days, because what happens is you've taken off that outer layer. So now the juice from the inside is going to slowly leak into the air. Back to, I always say, our middle school science class osmosis, right? That's going to happen with this. So in about a week, it will just shrivel up and be kind of dried in your walk-in refrigerator. So you want to make sure you juice this. Again, you can freeze the juice. Just put it in a souffle cup and you'll have a nice fresh lime juice to use on a salad or in any dish you want. So next, I'm just going to whisk this together. Just get everything all combined. I got a little sweetness from my brown sugar there. And now, kind of scoot that over, and I'm going to add my chicken. And I'm doing this on the stove top because I don't, unfortunately, have a steamer here. That would be great. But this is something that you would want to do in a steamer. You don't want to put something like chicken in an oven, right? I'm going to add it right to here and just cook it down. Grab my spatula. I want to coat that chicken, and then I want to warm it up. And it's not a lot of liquid. You can see it's not a lot of liquid for the amount of chicken, but what it's going to do, it's going to glaze and coat that chicken to add that flavor. And I think these strips just look a lot nicer than the diced chicken. My experience with students, sometimes the diced chicken, it just kind of can turn you off visually when you see it, even if the flavor is okay. So I like how the chicken strips just overall come across with a nicer presentation. And like I said, you can dice them if you need to, and then you're more in control of the size of the product, which I always like to be more in control of what's happening in the kitchen. So with the products that I'm getting. So now we're just going to kind of reduce this down. If I was doing this in a steamer, the same thing, it would really, we just want to heat it up. There's not much to reduce down, but on the stovetop, it will a little bit to form that glaze. So what we're going to, and if you were using a steamer, kind of what I was saying and got sidetracked, is that you want to make sure that you're reheating this meat in the steamer, because if you put this chicken that's already been cooked, or any chicken that's been already cooked, let's say you shred your own chicken, if that goes in the oven, it's really going to dry out. So you want to be really careful about making it too crunchy, right? We're not trying to make jerky. We don't want to put cooked chicken into the oven because it's going to dry out. It's already a naturally drier cut of meat. I would be less worried about, let's say, a chicken thigh going in there. But with the breast, you really want to make sure that you're being delicate with it. So make sure to reheat any meat in a steamer, and you'll be left with a much more tender product for your students, no matter what you're doing with it. So if a recipe says put some pre-cooked meat into the oven and there's not a whole lot of liquid going with it, I would definitely think twice about that, that recipe or how I'm going to execute it in my own kitchen. And you often have to do that. Every recipe should be standardized to your kitchen and the equipment that you have in your kitchen. So this is already warmed up pretty fast. I'm going to turn that off, and it's really that just coats the chicken, as you can see, and you have a little bit of liquid there. So I'm just going to put this off to the side. It already smells absolutely delicious. And I'm going to work on the last component of this recipe, which I think is what really makes it. So this is going to be the relish. And I love this recipe because it really uses a variety of fruit to show you what the possibilities are. So we have just to recap so far, we have our rice in the oven, we have our chicken going, which I would not do that. You could do it in a tilt skillet, but like I said, recommend just popping it in the steamer, mixing everything together. And next, I have some frozen mango. So this is frozen and thawed. Next, I have some canned pineapple tidbits. And then I have some fresh cantaloupe. And I have my seasonings that are going to go with it. A little bit of salt, fresh lime juice, brown sugar, and some crushed red pepper. So what I love about making fruit relish and fruit salsa or different things for your program is that you can really utilize a variety of USDA fruits. So we have canned, we have frozen, we have fresh. I could add dried, right? Maybe a little cranberry would be a nice chewy feature to this, right? So you can think about how you don't just have to do a fresh fruit salad, right? You can combine frozen and canned and fresh to get really that flavor where some students might like the fresh, but then you can kind of boost it up with your USDA fruit items from the freezer or from your dry storage area. So what I'm going to do here is just add my cantaloupe. One thing you want to try your best, which can get kind of tricky when you're working with canned and frozen product, is for the size consistency, right? So next I have my mango here. That's really going with that Latin flavor, and some pineapple. Get that right in there. I'm actually going to keep the pineapple juice in there as well. Depends on how much juice it has, but what's going to happen as it marinates in that juice is really going to create a lot of flavor. So when you scoop this, just make sure you're scooping it with a slotted spoon if it gets too juicy. So next I'm going to add a little bit of brown sugar to there, little bit of crushed red pepper for heat, and then a little bit of salt. What this salt is going to do, it's going to bring out the flavors. I often say this if you've heard me in probably any presentation before, that salt is food's cheerleader, and we must learn how to use it because it's really there to make everything taste a little better. You shouldn't taste salty. You should just taste how everything tastes like the best it can taste, right? It really brings out the flavor of everything else. My comparison is always that, why do we put salt in a chocolate chip cookie? Because it just makes it taste better. It shouldn't taste salty, right? But it makes the whole thing come together. Next, I'm gonna add, I have a little pineapple juice in here, but I'm gonna add a little fresh lime juice to really complement those flavors because citrus is also a flavor enhancer. Oh, how the ways I do absolutely love citrus when it comes to cooking. We can use the zest. It's gonna be a great flavor, but also when citrus, can really help boost everything up and make it taste a little better. So this isn't going to taste very limey, but everything's just going to taste a little better because it's going to play off that pineapple and the other fruit and just bring those flavors together. So I'm stirring this all together, and the longer this sits together, the better it will be. But this is something where you could actually make it in whatever you're going to serve it in. So whether you serve it from the line or you put something like this on the salad bar, this is a great fruit salad to add if you're serving anything really Southwest or Mexican or Latin or anything or South American, right? This is a great combination of fruits to put together to really complement that dish, and pretty mild, right? It doesn't necessarily, it can cross cultures, I guess is what of those areas. So that's simply it. And you can put it in the container that you're going to serve it in. That way you're not dirtying too many dishes and you're just working as you need it. So really easy way to make the relish. So now that you would want to keep cold, but I'm going to bring out my rice that's probably nice and warm by now to show you how this is all going to come together. Oh yeah, nice and steamy. And then we have the chicken. So we made these dishes I did it in small quantities, but I will tell you that these are very easy to put together, and really just such a variety of the USDA foods that you can weave through it to make this delicious dish. And I just want to portion this out to give you an idea as I bring this together, since it's 3 dishes, of really how you can place this bowl together. So we have our rice. I'm gonna do 2 scoops of this. And then you have your chicken here, right, that you can place right on top. And you could serve another vegetable with this too, beautiful roasted vegetables. And then you have your beautiful relish. And then I'm gonna take some cilantro here and sprinkle it as a garnish right on top. So you have this beautiful glazed Latin chicken bowl where you can really, the rice is gonna hold well, the chicken's gonna hold well with that extra moisture and coated, and you have this delicious relish that's just gonna marinate as it sits. So some things can definitely be made ahead, as it says, you know, there's 3 recipes, but really a great option. So now we'll have you rate this recipe.
Thanks, Chef Sam. That looks amazing, and so many great flavors for your students. I'd have to say too, you know, it's great with the glazed chicken, but you could easily do pulled pork in place of chicken, or potentially even turkey. So take a moment and rate this recipe. Tell us what you think about the glazed Latin chicken with spiced fruit relish. A little taste of those global flavors that your students crave. So the poll is wrapping up, and we see that 47% of you might give it a try, 23% said unlikely to use this recipe, 13% said good chance that it'll work for our school, and 17% said definitely be a hit. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. So let's take a look at this recipe and the USDA foods that we used in this recipe. So of course we used chicken. As I mentioned, we could have also used pulled pork, and that would be a wonderful dish, particularly for those of you in Indiana. It uses USDA parboiled brown rice, black beans. It can use a variety of frozen fruit or canned fruits. I could easily see canned diced peaches or canned diced pears, or maybe frozen strawberries with this, or frozen apple slices. So a great way to build a really complete, flavorful dish with USDA foods. If we look at the next dish that Sam's going to prepare, it is an Italian rice bake. And we're featuring beef crumbles with this dish. Also, mozzarella cheese is a USDA food. Of course, you have the rice and the tomatoes as well. So what I wanted to do in this section that I'm going to talk about today is really talk about the USDA foods available in Indiana. And I want to start by sharing this great resource. If you have any questions about USDA foods distribution in Indiana, this is a great handbook that you can download from in.gov under the Department of Education's website. The URL is on the screen. I mentioned before, if you have any questions about USDA foods, Cheryl Moore is a terrific resource, and I've found her just so helpful with questions that I have about the specific foods that you folks have in Indiana. I did want to go through the foods available for the 24-25 school year. You have 3 products, 3 chicken products available, 2 turkey products, 2 beef products, and then 3 pork products available. I'm featuring on the slide here a picture of the Peruvian pork sub that's available on Healthy School Recipes if you wanted to use any of that pulled pork. If we look at meat alternates, of course, we have a number of cheeses: cheddar, mozzarella, blended, and pepper jack cheese. Another meat alternate that's great is peanut butter. And then beans, the garbanzo beans, refried beans, and vegetarian beans. And here we're featuring pear nut sandwich that is using USDA pears, as well as dried cranberries. I don't see those on your list this year, but you could substitute raisins in there, and peanut butter, the kind of a really upscale way of serving peanut butter and jelly without the jelly, but all the sweetness from the fruit. Looking at the vegetables, we have vegetables available both frozen and canned with USDA foods, in addition to fresh vegetables from DoD fresh products. Both the canned and the frozen products are really high quality, low sodium. Some have no salt added. Really wonderful products to supplement your menu. The picture here is of esquites, Mexican street corn. When it's on the cob, it's referred to as elote. When it's off the cob, it's referred to as esquites. And here you can use both the frozen corn or canned corn for that. Fruit, you have fruit that's available frozen, canned, and dried. Again, both, all models will be lower in sugar. Most of them will have no sugar added. The applesauce will be unsweetened, and the most of the vegetables that are or fruits that are canned are in extra light syrup. This picture here is a yogurt and waffle bowl featuring wild blueberries. That's a great frozen product that you can get, and I just think that's such a beautiful, beautiful dish. And then the whole grains. The two whole grains that Indiana will get for $24.25 are flours, and both of those flours are for direct diverting. So you can divert your flour to your favorite bread producer, and they can then use that flour for the products that you order. Great. Let's bring Chef Sam back up for the second recipe, the Italian rice bake. I forgot to introduce Sam properly earlier. She's executive chef of Healthy School Recipes, and previously was chef and nutrition coordinator for Wyndham Raymond Schools in Maine. Welcome back, Sam.
Thank you so much, Kathy. So this dish, we're going to change flavor profiles, just totally to use our USDA rice and tomatoes and cheese and beef crumbles to create an Italian dish that is sure to entice your students, and just switch it up a little bit, right? They love these flavors of the Italian, spaghetti and meat sauce. And so how can we really incorporate that maybe with rice and change it up? And I like this option because when we think about gluten-free students or students with these allergies, while in elementary school, they want to be singled out, right? They want to make me a different meal. I want to be taken out of line. When they get to middle school, not so much. They want to do what their friends are doing. And it's just sort of the natural progression. So being able to create a dish that is in itself gluten-free, while even if you have someone in that you're feeding that's celiac, you need to prepare them a separate dish in a location that hasn't been cross-contaminated and follow all those guidelines. They can be eating the same thing as their friends, which I think is always something nice to think about as you're planning menus for our older students, really 6 through 12. So what we're going to do here is start with our 2-inch pan or a 4-inch, depending on the amount that you're going to make. I'm going to give this a spray because I think it helps when you're making this. I do not really love to use those pan liners because I try to keep, the plastic out of the food, but I think that it's a great thing to do when just to kind of help the edges here. So I'm going to add my brown rice and give that a little stir here. And next I'm going to have my granulated garlic that I'll add to this. Some crushed red pepper. Again, really these dried herbs and spices are what's going to carry the flavor. We need to really be using these for a variety of different uses, you know, and flavors. Next we have some Italian seasoning and a little bit of salt because that's going to, again, help bring up all these flavors. And next I'm going to just stir this all together. It'll mix in the cooking process. I just feel like I always want to give it a little stir. Excuse me one sec. Tickle in my throat. Next, I'm going to add our diced tomatoes here. So while my rice was in a measuring cup for the sake of pouring in the demonstration, just want to say one thing, that I weighed my rice out. I do not volume measure my rice. So I had put this on a scale. I tare it and then I add my rice. So I always weigh it out. I do not use a volume, like a liquid volume, to get that quantity. I use a weight volume, so, or weight measurement. So next I'm going to add my tomato puree, and this is just going to add like a nice, very robust tomato flavor, and that's what I'm going for here. Next I'm going to add some water. You can add water or stock. Water is just fine. Stock is going to add some extra depending on the sodium. So whatever you end up going with, just make sure that that correct item is in your nutrient analysis. And next I'm going to add my ground beef crumbles. So this would be a pre-cooked beef product. If you have raw beef, you just want to make sure you cook it ahead of time. So you're putting in a cooked beef here. Then I'm going to mix that in. It smells so good already. This is just like pasta and meat sauce, but with rice. And then we have our mozzarella cheese, so shredded cheese, which we have on hand too. A little bit of Parmesan cheese just to kind of get that nice flavoring with the blended cheeses. Mix that together. Again, this could be done beforehand. And then I'm going to add about half of this to my dish and stir it in, because half's going to go on top, because that's the best part. If you're going to best part, if you're going to make a nice cheesy dish, you want to make sure that you're putting some of that cheese on top, because not only does it taste good and you're getting that nice ooey gooey while you're eating it, but it's also from a presentation standpoint, it's really nice to have that nice melted cheese on top. So we have this ready to go. And so next we're going to put this in the oven. So depending on your oven, depending on your pans, depending on the seal between your lid and your pan, we want to make sure that if you want to put some foil, or you know how you cook rice, you want to sometimes you can put some saran wrap under there, because the foil sometimes can leach off the acid of the tomato. So you can put a little saran wrap and then put the lid on. You want a tight seal. Whenever you're cooking rice in the oven, you want to get a nice tight seal on there. Otherwise, if there's not a nice tight seal, what's going to happen is too much liquid. The liquid is going to evaporate too quickly, and that it's not going to cook your rice. So you want to make sure that you have a nice tight seal. This is a pretty new lid pan combo, so I got a nice tight seal. So you just want to make sure that you're thinking about that when you put it in the oven. It's so great to cook rice in the oven. It's one of my favorite ways to cook it. You could do it in the steamer or you could do it in the oven, but I feel like in the oven you get that nice toasted dry heat flavor, that kind of caramelizing of the grain itself in the oven, like a yellow rice, right? There are applications where it's absolutely makes an impact on the quality of the dish and the authenticity of the dish to cook it in the oven, like yellow rice, like this Italian rice bake, because you want some crunchy parts of your rice. So really important to think about the cooking method and not just put it in the steamer because that's what you always do. But there are times when rice, yes, it can be cooked in the steamer and it's great, but times like this where it should be cooked in the oven. Just keep in mind that when you cook it in the oven, it's going to extend the cooking time a little bit, because in the steamer you have lots of hot air going around. It's a moist heat cooking environment, so that water heats up really fast. In the oven, it takes a little longer because it's a dry heat cooking environment. So essentially, you could heat up the tomato, you could heat up the water, the broth, whatever that you're using, and then that would reduce the amount of cook time as well because you're starting with a hot liquid. Otherwise, when you put this in the oven, you have to wait for that liquid to get to a temperature where it's going to start cooking the rice, right? So there is a little bit of an added cook time when cooking rice in the oven, but it is well worth it for that delicious flavor. So I'm going to pop this right in my oven here. And then pull out the completed dish so you can see that it really is, oh, got some cheesy on my lid there. Some really delicious flavoring. It cooks down very well, right? Everything cooks together. You have the beef in there. If you don't have, let's say, ground beef and you had meatballs instead, you could absolutely throw some meatballs in here. Just make sure you work out that crediting before you put it on the menu to make sure you have the right amount of your MMA. But it really is delicious flavors and that nice Italian flavoring with the Italian seasoning, but very simple, and it's a dump and bake, which I really, really like and I think is a great option. In addition, this freezes very well, so you can make some, freeze it, and then offer it as an option another time. Just pop it right in the oven when you're ready. So one of my favorite tricks with freezing is you kind of make these blocks. You take the pan liners and then you put the dish into the pan liner and then freeze it, and then you pop the pan liner out so you can reuse the steam table pan, and you have just a block of frozen whatever you want to use. So you just store it, and then when you want to heat it back up, it's the perfect size for your steam table pan. So you just pop it back in there and you're able to reheat it in the oven or steamer anyway. So if you followed that, it's a great way to freeze items and then be able to easily reuse them. So now we have this Italian rice bake that is delicious and cheesy. I put the cheese on top, the rest of the cheese on top at the very last minute after it was done cooking. So I hope most of you know, anytime you're going to cheese something, or if a recipe says cheese something, make sure you don't put it back in the oven to bake. Our ovens at School Nutrition Kitchens are far too hot. Make sure you cheese it and you just pop it in the warmer. It'll melt in no time and it'll be the perfect amount of melty deliciousness. So now we'll have you rate this recipe.
Thanks, Chef Sam. Take a moment and tell us what you think of the Italian rice bake. So easy to assemble. It is, Chef Sam often says, a dump and a bake. And really paying attention to those seasonings makes a difference. And I hope that that's one of your takeaways from today, is that USDA foods need to be seasoned. Take a moment and tell us what you think about the Italian rice bake. Rate this recipe. Okay, we're going to wrap it up and close the poll. We see 21% said unlikely to use this recipe, 41% might give it a try, 24% said good chance that it'll work for your school, and 14% said this will definitely be a hit. Terrific. Now, as we wrap up, I want to review the key takeaways from today. First point is USDA foods are versatile. Second, unseasoned protein items can be seasoned according to your dish. Here we had a Latin flavor profile in the first dish, and then really an Italian flavor profile in the second dish, both starting with unseasoned protein items. USDA foods make up about 20% of the school meal. Be generous with the seasonings. Your students love flavorful foods. And then finally, use moist heat when reheating cooked meats so that they don't dry out. Now, as we move on to talk about how you can use this in your kitchen, I want to invite you to type in any of your questions or comments. We'll be taking questions shortly, so please type those in. In the meantime, I want you to think about how you can increase the variety of dishes prepared from USDA foods in your kitchen. How can USDA foods help you control your food costs? And then what USDA foods could you incorporate into your menu? Some things to think about. Great. Before we bring Chef Sam back up for the final dishes and take a look, take an opportunity to answer your questions, I want to launch the last poll. What form of USDA foods do you use in your school? Mostly frozen, mostly canned, mostly DOD fresh, mostly bulk for processing, or a mix of all? Take a moment and answer this poll question. Oh, I see there's a trend here already. We love to hear from you and know what schools in Indiana are doing. So what forms of USDA foods are you using? So the poll is wrapping up, and we see that most of you, about 3/4 of you, 74%, are using a mix of all forms. 11% are using mostly canned, 7% use mostly frozen, 4% are using mostly DOD, and 4% are using bulk for processing. Great. Let's bring Chef Sam back up now so she can share with us the final dishes. And we'll bring the poll down. Great. Oh, Chef Sam, welcome back. Can you show us what we have here?
All right, so we have the rice bake, which I showed you, which is just a scoop that you can serve on the line to your students with maybe another grain, depending on how you want to serve it, how much you want to serve of this, or a roll or something delicious. But really what I want to show you is the versatility of the glazed chicken, which I think is nice. We have the bowl that I demonstrated earlier, but also this is great as a wrap, right? So you can put the chicken in a wrap with some cilantro and then really make a plate out of it. You can put the relish in the wrap or you can keep it on the side and really have a nice presentation. So it doesn't have to be just a bowl, it can be a wrap, and thinking about other ways we can utilize this so it looks different in a different presentation style, just to keep your the appeal of different varieties of foods or kind of vehicles to get those flavors into your students' bellies.
Great. Thanks, Chef Sam. That's beautiful. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions and discussion. If you have any questions, please type that into the question box. Or if you have a favorite way to use USDA foods protein items, either chicken or beef crumbles or cheese, type that into the question box so that we can share that with others. We love getting questions from you folks. So, Chef Sam, you've often showed using the individual baking dishes for baked items, those disposable baking dishes. Could we do the Italian rice bake in that?
You could, but you'd have to standardize make sure you're getting that very correct amount of liquid. So I think it would be a little more temperamental to do it with this rice bake, just because you want to make sure that every grain of rice has the perfect amount of liquid to reach that cooked consistency, which is kind of more something you can do in a big pan versus little individual pans.
You would also want to make sure you had the right crediting for the meat alternate as well. That might be a little challenging. Both of those look delicious, Sam. What other fruits would you use in the spice fruit relish?
Well, you could use there's pineapple, mango, and cantaloupe in here. You could easily do some honeydew melon. I also think watermelon, which is always my favorite to put in fruit salsa because
Mhm.
once you take the rind off, that whole inside is yours. There's no pocket of seeds. It's going to make it tricky to cut. You can just, plank stick dice that to your heart's content. So I think that is a great fruit to put in here. And I like that a watermelon would give it a nice red color. This is sort of a very yellow palette, which is absolutely okay. But I'm a fan of more vibrant colors. So I would absolutely put a watermelon in here, but you could also put strawberries in there. So really a variety of fruits in what you have.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Mary's wondering about diced pears. Could you use diced pears in that?
Absolutely. I would keep the mango and the pineapple and then play with taking out, you could put pears in place of the cantaloupe. You want to keep that nice kind of more tropical flavor going, but I think pears would definitely complement they're a mild flavor, especially those canned pears. They would complement those dish. If you had diced canned pears, you'd be ready to roll.
Great. Thanks, Sam. And we had a comment from Tanya. Oh, thanks, Tanya. So good to see you on today. She says, our kids are loving our new Chipotle bowl, and we are using USDA pork, chicken, and beef. Kudos to you, Tanya. You're knocking it out of the park there. I love to hear all the positive things you're doing. And Mary commented, it's so hard to get kiddos to eat them. And I think that she's referring to the diced pears. I would add to that, Mary, that we have some really great recipes on Healthy School Recipes using diced pears. There's one with roasted pears, and roasting the fruit really is a nice way of kind of changing it up and giving it a new look. And I just love roasted fruits in addition to roasted vegetables. So I would suggest that you take a look at that. Okay, our hour's up, so we want to do our giveaway, our chef knife, knife guard, portable knife sharpener, bench scraper, and hot pad. And today's winner is Craig Niehaus from Clark Pleasant Community Schools. Congratulations, Craig. We're so glad that you were able to be with us today. I want to thank everybody for attending and ask that you complete the evaluation survey on your way out. Your attendance certificate will be emailed this afternoon. And join us next week as we continue exploring USDA foods with a focus next week on beans. I want to thank you, Chef Sam. As always, you do a fabulous job with demonstrating and explaining, and I just so appreciate your tips and techniques. Thanks so much, Chef Sam, and thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.